Good morning, friends, and welcome. Today is the anniversary of the Theosophical movement. Remembering these very inspiring words from Mr. Crosby, which combine action and resignation. The movement is accelerated by us to the extent we work for it, and hindered to the extent that we, as it were, let it pull us along. Every student who will strive to make himself a fitting instrument is necessary for the work. To the full capacity, soul, mind, and body, more power is needed. It will come if we will just open those big hearts of ours and let them work. The Bombay Lodge sent us fraternal greetings with these words that RC just mentioned, and they send their best wishes as it celebrates this occasion with a special meeting and talk on all three objects. The LTDC, in a few minutes, will have a talk titled The Three Halls, followed at 12:05 p.m. with a continuation of our study from the book of images. Next Sunday at 11 a.m., we will continue on Google Meet our study of the key to Theosophy. Declaration of ELT. The policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of Theosophy without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the Theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and lofty to leave it to time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is a dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy and the exemplification and practice of these principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds at the inalienable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, the similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the whole soul bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists and the furtherance of unity. It regards the Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organizations. And it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes and who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be the better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. And we want to touch on the fundamentals of Theosophy, of propositions.
Yes. There are three fundamental propositions in the secret doctrine, and they roughly translate to deity, law, and consciousness. So the first one states that there is an eternal, boundless, and omnipresent, immutable principle upon which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception, can only be dwarfed by any human expression. It has been said to be beyond the range of reach and thought, and it's been called a substance principle, neither substance nor principle on its own, but like an absolute reality which antecedes all manifested conditioned being. It has been called an infinite and eternal cause, and has been called beingness rather than being, because it is beyond the range of human thought. The second fundamental is law or cycles. And it states that the eternity of the universe as a boundless plane is periodically the playground of numberless universes, incessantly manifesting and disappearing, called the manifesting stars and the sparks of eternity. And the appearance and disappearance of worlds is like a regular tidal ebb of flux and reflux. And this second fundamental shows the absolute universality of the law of periodicity or cycles of flux and reflux, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature. And we can see it ourselves in the alternation of day and night, sleeping and waking, life and death, etc. The third fundamental proposition relates to consciousness, and it states that the identity of all souls coming from that unknown root, the first principle, are on an obligatory pilgrimage through the cycle of incarnation or necessity in accordance with cyclic and karmic law. And it states that no purely spiritual buddhi or divine soul can have an independent conscious existence before the spark which issued from that pure essence or universal oversoul has passed through every elemental form of the phenomenal world and acquired individuality first by natural impulse and then by self-induced and self-devised efforts. Thus, it ascends through all the degrees of intelligence, from the lowest to the highest manas, from the mineral and plant up to the holiest archangel, that of a Dhyani Buddha. And it admits of no privileges or special gifts in man, save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit through a long series of metempsychoses or reincarnations. And that concludes the three fundamental propositions.
Thank you. Our devotional reading for today is from the Voice of the Silence, starting on page 74. On someone's path, O strata body, thou art secure. I, on that marga, where naught but darkness meets the weary pilgrim, when torn by thorns, the hands drip blood, the feet are cut by sharp and unyielding flints, and Mara wields its strongest arms. There lies a great reward immediately beyond. Calm and unmoved, the pilgrim glideth up the stream that to Nirvana leads. He knoweth that the more his feet will bleed, the wider will himself be watched. He knoweth well that after 7 short and fleeting bursts, Nirvana will be his. Such is the Dhyana path, the haven of the yogi, the blessed goal that strata bodies crave. Not so when he hath crossed and won the Arya path. There Klesha is destroyed forever, Tana's roots torn out, and but safe, disciple, yet one word. Canst thou destroy that divine passion? Compassion? Compassion is no attribute, it is the law of laws, eternal harmony. Allah's self, a shoreless universal essence, the light of everlasting right, and fitness of all things, the law of the love eternal. The more thou dost become at one with it, thy being melted in its being, the more thy soul unites with that which is, the more thou wilt become compassionate and absolute. Such is the Arya path of the Buddhas of perfection. Know if of Amitabha, the boundless age, thou wouldst become co-workers, then must thou share delight acquired, like the bloody thoughtful swing upon the span of all three worlds. And now we have our talk on the three halls.
Let me share my slides. Now, I may turn up a video just make sure it does not freeze here. Are you able to see?
It's coming up. Yeah, I see it now.
Okay. Good morning, friends, and welcome to our short talk on the three halls. In the voice of the silence, the verses of which are derived and translated from the Golden Book of Golden Precepts by H.P. Blavatsky, the student is instructed as follows. Three halls, O weary pilgrim, lead to the end of toils. Three halls, O conqueror of Mara, will bring thee through three states into the fourth, and thence into the seven worlds, the worlds of rest eternal. If thou wouldst learn their names, then hearken and remember. The name of the first hall is ignorance, avidya. It is the hall in which thou sawest the light, in which thou livest and shalt die. The name of hall second is a hall of learning. In it thy soul will find the blossoms of life, but under every flower a serpent is coiled. The name of the third hall is wisdom, beyond which stretch the shoreless waters of Akshara, the indestructible fount of omniscience. So these three halls, metaphorically speaking, we are taught are the three states of consciousness, commonly referred to as Jagrat, which is waking, Swapna, dreaming, and Sushupti, dreamless sleep. During the course of this talk, we will touch upon the three states as well as cover some advice provided in Theosophy on leading the necessary concentrated life to benefit from the third state, which is the Sushupti. So these three states are the symbolic stages of the pilgrim's spiritual journey. So Mr. Judge states that every theosophist must fully grasp the importance of these three states of consciousness in relation to his inner growth. Of this, it is of great benefit to learn to bring back the memories experienced in Sushupti, which is the state of spiritual consciousness, or is also referred to as, quote unquote, partaking in the banquet of the gods. The first stage is consciousness is Jagrat, the waking state. The Jagrat state is described in Theosophy as a level of consciousness where the mind is engaged with the external world through the sensory organs. This state is the domain of the physical brain, which acts as an interface between the soul and the material plane. According to HPB, Jagrat, which is consciousness, is a state in which the individual ego operates most distinctly. It is here that humans perceive duality, experience time and space, and interact with others on the mundane plane. In the secret doctrine, HPB elucidates that the Jagrat state is crucial for the spiritual aspirant because it provides the opportunity to engage in deliberate action and moral choice. She argues that although the waking state is often marked by distractions and illusions of the material world, which is also called Maya in Hindu philosophy, it is also the stage where conscious evolution begins. By exercising free will and discernment, individuals can align their physical actions with higher spiritual principles. The Jagrat state is marked by three primary characteristics: sensory perception, intellectual activity, and personal identity. These elements make it distinct from other states, such as the dream state, which is Swapna, and the deep sleep state, Sushupti. And in the Jagrat state, we have one, sensory perception, years where the senses dominate the Jagrat experience, providing input from the external world. Theosophy states that these sensory experiences are filtered through the lower mind, which is kama manas, which often skews perception and desires, with desires and fears. Two, intellectual activity, and this consists of rational thought and decision making, which are the hallmarks of a Jagrat state. The manas, mind, operates actively, analyzing, categorizing, and responding to the external stimuli. Three, personal identity, that's the ego or the sense of I, is most strongly felt in the waking state. This self-awareness is both a blessing and a limitation, as it creates the illusion of separateness from the universal self, which is Atma. So Mr. Judge reminds us that this is the only state where we must strive to utilize to come to a full consciousness of the inner self, as well as come to a realization that this self, the higher self, is the only permanent man. Since for a majority of individuals whose minds are subservient to the lower karma principle, are unaware of the permanent self within, this self, this state of consciousness, is referred to as a hall of ignorance. Thoughts contemplated during the Jagrat state dictate whether the individual will be able to recall the higher spiritual experience from the Sushupti or the deep sleep state. The second state of consciousness is referred to as a hall of learning and is described as a crucial stage on the aspirant's journey, lying between the worldly distractions of hall of ignorance and transcendent bliss of hall of wisdom. It represents a phase of rigorous self-discipline and the cultivation of knowledge, ethics, and spiritual discernment. So here's what HPB writes. She says that hall of learning, the hall which lies beyond thy world and the unknown, it is the threshold of the path to truth. This hall is not merely a physical location, but a metaphorical space where the soul learns to overcome lower desires and distractions. It is a place where aspirants prepare themselves for entry into higher states of consciousness, cultivating virtues such as compassion, selflessness, and discernment. HPB emphasizes that the hall of learning is a necessary stage of purification. Here, the aspirant learns to distinguish between the illusory nature of the material world, which is Maya, and the enduring truths of the spiritual realm. In the secret doctrine, she connects this concept with the idea of antakarana, this bridge between the lower and higher self. The hall of learning is where the aspirant strengthens this bridge through discipline and spiritual study. Blavatsky also highlights the danger of the false interpretation of the knowledge gained in the hall of learning. She warns against becoming ensnared by pride or intellectual vanity, which can divert the aspirant from true spiritual progress. Knowledge, she asserts, must be coupled with wisdom and used in service of humanity. Mr. Judge warns about the confusion caused by the inability to interpret the imagery experienced on the astral plane, and the remedy to this is self-purification and initiation into the esoteric knowledge. In his writings, Mr. Judge emphasizes that this stage is not only about acquiring esoteric knowledge, but also about applying it to everyday life. He advises aspirants to live ethically, practice altruism, and strive for harmony in their interactions with others. Judge's teachings underscore that the Hall of Learning is not an abstract concept, but a lived experience. It is in the trials and challenges of daily life that aspirant provides the commitment to the spiritual truth. By practicing patience, humility, and self-control, one demonstrates their readiness to progress to the Hall of Wisdom. Mr. Robert Crosby states that Hall of Learning is also a stage of balance. The aspirant learns to integrate intellectual understanding with higher compassion. This balance prepares the seeker to perceive higher truths and to act as a channel for spiritual knowledge for his fellow beings. In the Mahatma Letters to AP Senate, the description of the importance of cultivating viveka, which is discernment, and viraga, detachment during this phase. The Mahatmas emphasize that the aspirant must purify the motives and strive for selfless service, as the spiritual path is not for personal gain, but for the benefit of all beings. Additionally, the Hall of Learning corresponds to the early stages of chelarship, where the aspirant undergoes rigorous training to prepare for higher spiritual work. The Mahatmas stress that this stage requires unwavering dedication, humility, and a willingness to sacrifice personal comforts for the higher good. The journey through the Hall of Learning is arduous but rewarding. The aspirant must confront the inner weaknesses, purify the motives, and cultivate virtues such as compassion and selflessness. This stage also requires the aspirant to adopt a broader perspective, recognizing the interconnectedness of all life and striving to serve humanity. The theosophical teachings collectively affirm that progress through the Hall of Learning is marked by moments of trial and triumph. The aspirant must face periods of doubt, confusion, and temptation, but these challenges serve to strengthen their resolve and prepare them for the great responsibilities of the spiritual path. It is a phase of preparation, purification, and transformation where the seeker learns to transcend the illusions of the material world and align the life with spiritual truths. By embracing the teachings of the Hall of Learning, the aspirant not only advances towards enlightenment but also becomes a beacon of light for others, embodying the theosophical ideal of selfless service to humanity. The Hall of Learning reminds us that the path to wisdom is not a solitary endeavor, but a collective journey where individual growth contributes to the awakening of the whole. In this way, the aspirant bridges the realms of the personal and the universal, fulfilling the role as a co-creator of spiritual evolution. The third stage is the Hall of Wisdom. In the voice of the silence, the Hall of Wisdom represents the final stage of the aspirant's journey, following the life of ignorance and the Hall of Learning. Blavatsky describes it as heaven for rest and peace for exhausted souls, the place where they gain knowledge and wisdom untold. The Hall of Wisdom symbolizes enlightenment, the transcendence of duality, and unity with the universal principles of existence. It is where the aspirant merges their individual consciousness with the universal Atma, self, the Atma, and becomes a fully realized being. This state is not merely an intellectual attainment, but a transformative spiritual experience. It involves the complete dissolution of the low ego, mastery of over the lower self, and awakening of the divine faculties within. The Hall of Wisdom is where the aspirant truly understands the interconnectedness of all life. HPB elaborates on Hall of Wisdom as a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment and universal service. She says that those who enter the Hall of Wisdom must devote their lives to the service of the great law. They must learn that the highest knowledge is a recognition of the one life in all. The Hall of Wisdom is not an external location, but a state of being achieved through inner purification and spiritual discipline. In the Secret Doctrine, HPB explains that wisdom is not the accumulation of knowledge, but the realization of eternal truths that transcend the limitations of the material world. The aspirant who reaches the Hall of Wisdom has bridged the gap between the lower and the higher self, aligning fully with the divine will. Blavatsky also underscores the altruistic aspect of this attainment. She writes that those who enter the Hall of Wisdom do not seek personal liberation, but return to the world as bodhisattvas, dedicating themselves to alleviating the suffering of others. This selfless service is hallmark of true wisdom, as it reflects the aspirant's recognition of the unity of all beings. Mr. Judge expands on Blavatsky's teaching by emphasizing that the role of self-sacrifice in the Hall of Wisdom. He asserts that the wisdom is inseparable from compassion and that the true aspirant must transcend personal desires to live entirely for the benefit of others. In his work, The Ocean of Theosophy, Mr. Judge describes the attainment of wisdom as a realization of the universal law of harmony and the aspirant's responsibility to act in accordance with it. Further, Mr. Judge also highlights the importance of ethical living and self-discipline as prerequisites for entering the Hall of Wisdom. He teaches that the aspirant must cultivate virtues such as patience, humility, and steadfastness, which prepare them to embody the higher principle of wisdom and serve as a beacon of light for others. Robert Crosby focuses on the practical steps required to reach the Hall of Wisdom. He emphasizes that a journey involves a profound transformation of character and consciousness. Mr. Crosby teaches that meditation, selfless action, and the study of spiritual truths are essential practices for aspirants. Crosby also highlights the role of inner harmony in attaining wisdom. He asserts that the aspirant must balance the intellect and intuition, aligning the mind with the heart. This integration allows the individual to perceive the unity underlying all apparent diversity, which is the essence of wisdom. The Mahatmas provide some of the most profound insights into the Hall of Wisdom. In the letters to A.P. Sinnett and others, they describe it as a culmination of the Chela's or disciples' journey, a state where the aspirant becomes one with the divine law, dharma, and gains access to universal knowledge. The Mahatmas emphasize that the Hall of Wisdom is not a reward but a responsibility. Those who attain the state are entrusted with the sacred duty of guiding humanity towards spiritual evolution. They act as intermediaries between the spiritual and material realms, using their wisdom to uplift and inspire others. One of the key teachings of the Mahatmas is the concept of renunciation. They stress that the aspirant must abandon all personal ambitions and attachments to enter the Hall of Wisdom. This self-abnegation reflects the highest form of love and devotion, as the aspirant becomes a channel for the divine will. Theosophical teachings remind us that the journey to the Hall of Wisdom is not for personal gain, but for the benefit of all beings. It is a path of sacrifice, dedication, and love, reflecting the highest ideals of spiritual evolution. By walking this path, the aspirant fulfills the divine purposes and contributes to the awakening of humanity. The quest to find the master in the hall of wisdom with the aspirants is the ultimate goal on the spiritual path. The hall of wisdom is both the state of consciousness and a sanctuary for inner truth. Through purification, meditation, service, and renunciation, the aspirant prepares themselves to enter this exalted realm and receive the guidance of the Master. Finding the Master in the Hall of Wisdom is not about discovering an external figure alone, but the awakening of the Master within, the higher self or the Atman. This awakening is facilitated by the guidance of the Mahatma, who serves as the spiritual catalyst. And here's how the Mahatma can help. First, the Master is an inner guide. The true Master resides within the aspirant. The Hall of Wisdom represents the state where this inner guidance becomes fully active. HPB states that the Master is a silent watcher within. The aspirant must listen to the still voice that speaks to the heart of being. The Mahatmas, while external beings, serve primarily as guides to awakening the inner Master. The assistants, those who demonstrate unwavering dedication to the spiritual path. Master M explains, we are but humble servants of the law. We can point the way, but it is a disciple's effort that brings them to the hall of wisdom. The connection with the Master is established through devotion, self-purification, and earnest aspiration. This bond is sacred and based on mutual trust and respect. Mahatma K.H. writes that the Master reveals himself only to the pure in heart. The aspirant must learn the privilege of guidance through selfless striving. The attainment of the hall of wisdom requires the aspirant to undergo profound self-transformation, discipline, and dedication to the spiritual path. Theosophy provides a detailed roadmap for this journey, emphasizing meditation, selfless service, and spiritual study. And some of the key precepts include the purification of the lower self. That is, to enter the hall of wisdom, the aspirant must overcome the illusions of the lower self, including selfish desires, egoism, and attachment to material pleasures. HPB emphasizes, and I quote, the lower self must be slain. Only when the self is gone can the soul walk freely in the hall of wisdom. The purification involves cultivating virtues such as humility, compassion, and selflessness. The next is self-discipline and meditation. The aspirant must practice meditation and self-control to still the mind and attune to the higher vibrations. Meditation creates a bridge between the lower self and the universal consciousness. And here's where Robert Cosby offers a practical piece of advice. He states, meditation is a key that unlocks the gates of the hall of wisdom. It is through quiet introspection that the voice of the Master can be heard. Third is living a life of service. The path to wisdom is marked by selfless service to humanity. By acting altruistically, the aspirant aligns their action with the divine law, which is dharma. And Mr. Judd says that to serve humanity is to serve the masters. The hall of wisdom open to those who dedicate their lives to the betterment of others. The fourth is study and discernment. The aspirant must study sacred texts and develop spiritual discernment, which is called viveka. This prepares the mind to distinguish between the real and the unreal. HPB writes as follows: knowledge must ripen into wisdom. The seeker must first know before they can understand, and then act from a place of true discernment. Renunciation and detachment is the fifth advice given in Theosophy. Detachment from personal desires and outcomes is essential. The aspirant must renounce the fruits of the action and surrender to the divine will. And finally, Master KH writes that renunciation is a path to true wisdom. Only by surrendering the life one can enter the abode of truth. And with this short talk, we will open up the floor for any questions. And peace to all. Thank you.
No question.
Sure.
It seems like when when you're going through all these halls, it seems like in the background of my selfishness, it seems like and I never heard of the names that you attached to those things. But it seems like some I've sort of been working on that, except my selfishness has always been in the forefront. But all three of those concepts seem like I was born with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all were, if I understand it right. But we have to get get to the wisdom, the part of this hall of wisdom. We have to get to that and go through that before we can do the things we want to do all right, which is compassion and all that. If we have to have the compassion and all that, we have to do it right too, because it can't be out of ignorance. It got to be out of learning. If I understand what you're saying, correct?
Absolutely. I think HPB advises, right, that it's through deep study that you have to first cultivate discernment, right? To be able to practice, you have to know. And one of the, and by the way, these three halls are three states of the same consciousness. The same ego goes through three experiences, right? And so the first two halls are essential as well. It is the hall of ignorance is where we are right now in a waking state, and we are being constantly bombarded by external stimulus, and we have to know how to discern what is right, what is wrong, what is permanent, what is impermanent. And then the hall of learning, which we are taught, is in essentially the astral space, where without having spiritual discernment, it'd be really difficult to understand and interpret what the aspirant sees. And that's why Mr. Judd said that. He said somewhere that the truly fortunate ones are who enter the astral or the second hall after they have gained sufficient spiritual knowledge. So in other words, you're viewing the hall of learning, the astral realm, from a higher plane instead of from a lower plane. And we, in a way, I think most theosophers can relate to that. Right? You see incidences where folks who do not have a spiritual discernment, but have in a way awakened some aspect of their astral body, and who are not able to really understand what's in there. They kind of view those images they see and interpret them, and in a very faulty way. And and elsewhere we are taught that we should just allow these faculties to unfold naturally. And again, coming back what you said, the best way is study what's in theosophy, practice it, and teach others. And in the light on a path, it says, right, grow as a flower grows, unconscious but still yearning for the light. And so it is, and that's a very, it's in a way we have to be selfless to really be able to grow towards the light without any desire for to attain any powers, any knowledge of others.
But especially in the West, and it's probably all over the world, the same thing. Our natural inclination is to be selfish.
Yes.
And we have to transform that. It's a transformation process, going from the ignorance and selfishness to the whole of knowledge and selflessness.
Yeah.
A question.
Yeah.
Are these three halls really, separate and have their boundary, or do they interpenetrate each other to any extent? Or you really have to complete one before you get to the other?
The best answer the student can give is they are not necessarily separate. They're three aspects of the one. So don't necessarily, and in terms of boundaries, one way to kind of, at least metaphorically, express that is basically meditate on the three states. The three, the waking state, the dream state, and dreamless state. And we are taught in theosophy that as body falls asleep, it goes into the dream state. The dream state, in a sense, a reflection of your waking thoughts in many ways. So it is very confusing, right? And then after a while you go into deep sleep, Sushupti. And that's where you, in a sense, interact, where the Atma, the higher self, is temporarily unshackled from the lower personality and is able to merge itself, so to speak, with the higher, with the oneness. And and then as the energy in the body dissipates and individual starts awakening, he has to go back to the same path. He has to go back to the dream state, which is a very confusing state. And in that state, what we may have learned in the Sushupti is kind of lost, and then you wake up. So there is this dream state is kind of is a boundary which we have to purify and harmonize so that we can bring back what we have learned. So I think that the term boundary is more maybe a metaphorical statement and rather than separateness, because these three are one, they're one and the same consciousness. At least that is the student's limited interpretation. It's a lot that is very difficult to understand. And some of the Upanishads, like I think the Mandukya and the Katha Upanishads, they go more deeper into it.
Thank you. The hall of I think it was in the Hall of Wisdom, the third hall. You mentioned a complete dissolution of the lower self. I guess it doesn't necessarily mean that the being is acting at that point without a physical body, although they could, but that it's just they have such mastery over it that it's not, the lower self is just not an impediment of any kind to expressing, sharing wisdom.
Yes, I mean, if you, I think in the Gita, Krishna says that that we should control our senses in a way where the senses only do what they're supposed to do, as opposed to contract with desires and passions. And so, I believe what HPB meant is basically getting rid of the kama rupa, the lower monastic tendencies. But the physical body is an instrument. So physical body becomes an instrument where it's completely controlled by the inner man, the real master, as opposed to, in the current state where we feel that it's a lower manas that's controlling the body versus the higher aspect, which should have more mastery over the lower body.
Go ahead, Herb.
Yeah. Just you had mentioned meditation going into the hall of wisdom. Meditation is a kind of a process you go through to get into the hall of wisdom, and you continue on with the meditation. I would think you would. But yeah, a friend, a colleague, I was raised in a church, and she said to me, well, something about praying. And I knew what she was getting at, and I said, well, you pray and I'll meditate, and we'll get there. So we'll get there eventually, but it'll be I guess a longer path for those who are praying to an outside God. They got to realize that, hey, it's an internal process you have to deal with.
Absolutely. In fact, as HPB said, or the master said that the true master is within you, and to be able to reach that master, the meditation in the context of first recognizing that there's only one permanent self in us, and that is the higher self, the true. So first you have to recognize discernment, and then studying the scriptures, theosophy, and constantly meditating on them. In that way, you harmonize your thoughts with the true master within. So in a way, the ancients refer to prayer also as meditation and devotion to the higher self, and not necessarily seeking favors from some external entity.
So this process that I was raised in, you bypass that. If you figure that you have to deal with an outside God to get there, you bypass a lot of stuff, which is necessary. Is in retrospect. So yeah, you will eventually get there, no matter which way you go. If you're trying to recognize that there's more to this than the personal selfish self. But in order to get there, you've got to realize that it's through that inner self that you get there. You don't get there through an outside self.
Yes, and recognizing that when you look at every individual as the permanent Atma, and not necessarily the physical personality that you contact and you judge against, right? So I think recognizing the divine in all beings, all human beings, lower beings, and that's and meditating on that will kind of in a way put you in the right frame of mind to be able to understand and the higher knowledge that is given out.
You mentioned in the Hall of Learning, one becomes a channel to assist others and to assist evolution. Is that channel through the Antaskarna, or do we? I mean, maybe you're just speaking generally, not specifically about it, but it just got me thinking, and I was wondering more about this channel.
So so this student's understanding was based on Mr. Judge's advice that those who truly consciously enter the hall of learning have already gone through significant spiritual progress, right? First, and so from that viewpoint, strengthening that channel, the Antashkarana, at that point in time between low and higher is important to raise the lower to the higher. As we, as Krishna says, right, we should raise the lower by the higher, not the other way around. And so from that angle is where you become a channel in Hall of Learning, and you're able to guide others as well. What I recall reading in one of the letters to AP Senate, where the master says that two things, that leading a spiritual life will automatically unfold the astral propensities first, because it's through the astral light that you can start receiving much higher knowledge. And what he goes on to say is that without having the right knowledge to interpret what the aspirant or the student will see in the hall of learning in the astral light, it is almost an exercise in futility. It becomes, and every once in a while, we hear about what is black magic, what is white magic, right? And so white magic is, metaphorically speaking, is first having the right knowledge before you step into that hall, before you step into that consciousness, into the hall of learning, and use that only for learning, and walk away from it. Because Theosophy teaches that there are a lot of, the aspirant will be tempted. The hall of learning has more temptations than the hall of ignorance.
Wow.
And that's why the wise stays, right? You learn what you can and flee that hall. In a way, it's basically, it's saying, learn all you can, learn to discern the right images from the wrong images, and then quickly step into the hall of wisdom, or prepare yourself to step into the hall of wisdom.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that Antashkarana is necessary
Mm-hmm.
as long as we are not fully in the hall of wisdom. Once we get in that,
Yes.
then that Antashkarana is not needed anymore.
No, because now you have full mastery over your remaining 6 principles, right? So you don't need that.
Yeah. So as long as I think I'm trained an outside God, I need that help.
Yeah.
I need that bridge.
Because in terms of assisting evolution, it seems like because at the human stage, humans have a broad effect on the lower kingdoms,
Mm-hmm.
assisting evolution would primarily be assisting people to understand their true nature, or
Mhm.
maybe assisting evolution is broadly all the kingdoms at once, just by one's vibration and thought. Or I wonder if it's more in humans at the top, like more of a pyramid or something. I guess I'm thinking very mechanically, but if you have any other thoughts on assisting evolution.
So this student understanding is primarily from assisting evolution towards more spiritual beings, right? In many ways, we are taught that we are straight from the path, and we are walking back to our original source, right? And in Theosophy, that is the evolution is from within, right? You will be evolving within, and so that is students' understanding, is really being able to acquire that knowledge. Because hall of learning is probably one of the most risky and dangerous states of learning. And if the aspirant has conquered that, has been successfully able to step from hall of learning into hall of wisdom, it is their duty to assist others to do the same. And in lesser ways, and it's our duty as Theosophists is also gradually help to awaken people's inner spiritual faculties. And many ways that is true evolution. That's what HPB says. True evolution. She talks about Darwinism, which is mostly based on evolution of the physical instrument. But what Theosophy teaches, and in the key of Theosophy, HPB says that true evolution is a gradual awakening of the spiritual faculties, and that will help you realize your true self. And in many ways, and if you extend that a little more to the lower kingdoms, in a way we are assisting but not getting in the way, put it that way. But not, right now humans are obstructing, as we see, the lower kingdoms who need to evolve through their own impulse. And the question is, are we as human beings, do we appoint ourselves as trustees to these lower kingdoms who need our help, or are we just obstructing? Are we getting in the way?
Well,
Yes.
I'm hearing when you are in the Hall of Ignorance, you don't even know about a lot of things that are going on in the Hall of Learning. But when you're in the Hall of Learning, you're recognizing that underneath each flower, a serpent is called. And you have to, that's what you're in danger, I guess. When you realize that. And then when you finally graduate to the Hall of Wisdom, and it's not necessarily a graduation either, because you're going back and forth a lot.
Yeah.
But at least you are conscious of all that, and you learn to overcome those lower tendencies better, and they don't get in your way as much, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah. The serpent, metaphorically speaking, can also be, at least in one way, understood as temptation of lower order. And evolution, in a sense, is you're evolving from the hall of ignorance to the hall of learning into the hall of wisdom. That is, we can also, in a way, look at that as evolution. We are evolving into the higher state.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why I think the voice also calls the hall of ignorance is known for its perfidious beauty. So do not get mesmerized by the beauty you see on the astral plane in hall of learning.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the differences between the good witch and the bad wicked witch. The wicked witch is still in the first hall.
Yes.
Hall, but the good one is passed through. And I was wondering if you could. Is it a transform from a wicked witch to a good witch, or from just being just learning as you go, kind of thing? You got to unlearn, I guess, if you are really immersed in that first hall. It's probably harder to break away, I would think, if you just get into that hall of learning and continue on that way.
And that's true for many people who believe they only live once, and so they have to achieve whatever material things they can in one life, as opposed, so I think that also makes it much harder for people to try to really grasp the true concept of who they really are.
So you're breaking away from that idea that the selfishness of the wicked witch. Breaking away from that once you get into it, it's probably pretty hard to do. Well, should we think about moving on to the next round?
Sure.
Okay.